I really wanted to post this yesterday, but I had to do some more research first. Well, here it is. Ryzen's 4-core performance. Stay tuned. So a huge part of me wanted to call this video Ryzen 5 benchmarks or something like that, but while it's probably quite indicative of Ryzen 5's performance, I really hate clickbait titles and refuse to make the beginning of a video essentially telling you the title was a lie. But hopefully this gets a fair amount of views as it's definitely huge news. A gentleman over at Zolcorn, I know, I've never heard of it either, nevertheless, the author did something I've really wanted to do. But until I can get my hands on Ryzen myself, I'm obviously unable to. Well, he basically took the 1800X and disabled 4 of the 8 cores, effectively making it a 4-core 8-thread processor. Then, and this is a little peculiar but I understand his reasoning, he clocked both it and the 7700K to 4 GHz. This, of course, means he had to underclock the 7700K, but it effectively let him test the performance when both of these units are running at the same frequency, essentially testing the architectural differences of each platform. His primary reason, though, was to see how the 1400X, Ryzen 5's rumored upcoming lower-tier processor, would seem performance-wise. If, of course, you're able to overclock it to 4 GHz. Not to sidetrack too much, but I really have to discuss this as it's incredibly important when we discuss things like the i5, and I believe there's some misconceptions based on old rules that I still see discussed today. Keep in mind that this comes from a gamer who uses an i5 in my own rig, and have been very happy with it, so please don't think I'm just trying to hate on that SKU or anything like that. When it comes to price performance in gaming, it's great, and that remains true today. The only thing is that the i7 simply has become better for gaming. Whether the price difference is worth it in your eyes is certainly something to consider, because the difference in gaming performance isn't that huge. But if we take a look at a great comparison made by Digital Foundry, there are multiple times the differences goes up quite a bit. And I know what you're thinking, but the i7 has a higher clock speed, and this is true. But that's why I use Digital Foundry's results. They actually compared both processors running at 4.8 GHz, yet we still see similar variations. If we take it a step further, they compared older i7s at even less clock speed than the i5 was at, and in most cases, the older, lower clocked i7 kept up and in some ways completely crushed the i5. There are a couple exceptions, but I think that shows how important optimization and architecture is. That leaves us with only 2 differences left between these processors. The first is cache, but the second and probably most important is hyperthreading, which effectively takes those 4 physical cores and makes 8 logical cores. In the past, it didn't seem much benefit was given from hyperthreading or SMT, but it appears games are making more use of it. That or the higher cache, but probably both. So, now that that's out of the way, it brings me to why I said all of it in the first place. Ryzen 5's processors have SMT, similar to Intel's hyperthreading technology of the i7s and above. And actually, they also match the cache of the i7s. Unfortunately, until Microsoft fixes the issues with Ryzen's SMT, it won't benefit all that well. But with the assumption they will, as it would be odd if it didn't get fixed, let's discuss the results of the actual 4-core Ryzen to Intel's 4 GHz 7700K, once again keeping in mind that currently the SMT isn't really working all that great. I'm going to throw up only a few of the non-gaming benchmarks and go right into the gaming ones. Anyway, here are the results. So it's pretty obvious that Ryzen held out pretty well. though a couple games were really bad, like Far Cry Primal, but it's certainly important to note that this is while trying to make the process indicative of the 1400X, which is set to be a $199 processor. That's pretty incredible, and hopefully it's going to get a ton better when SMT is fixed. One thing to definitely look at, though to somewhat take with a grain of salt because we're essentially comparing the 1080 to the Titan results. But hear me out. Rise of the Tomb Raider was a title done by both Digital Foundry and Zolcorn. The i5 did very poorly compared to the i7 in the Digital Foundry results, yet the 4-core Ryzen did incredibly well compared to the 7700K. As you can see, the results for both of those processors are lower than the 7700K in Digital Foundry's results, but I definitely say that's because Digital Foundry used the Titan X while Zolcorn used a 1080. So what exactly does all this tell us? Well, for one, when it comes to Intel, their hyperthreading makes quite a bit of a difference in modern games. You could say it's the cache, but if that's the case, Ryzen 5's chips will also have the same 8 MB of cache as the i7's. Basically, the one place that Intel just might be able to pull ahead is with its i5's clock speeds. While the older i7s were clocked less and still crushed the i5 in many games, they were still clocked at 4.3 GHz to the i5's 4.8. If Ryzen 5 can get up to 4.3, I'd be really impressed. Just don't expect it. The question is whether the additional difference in Ryzen's clock is enough for the i5 to pull ahead. Who knows? And AMD does have a past of not convincing game developers to work hard on optimization for their processors. And really, I think that's what we're seeing here in a lot of these very strange positions, though it probably does have a little bit to do with the SMT, but I don't know. But what do you think of the results shown today? Are you excited for the upcoming Ryzen 5 launch? If so, let's discuss in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please subscribe. I definitely have a ton more content coming your way. And as always, have a great day.